The only time my kid listens is when I'm yelling. Eventually, children are going to grow deaf because they're going to just start to tune you out. And of course, kids don't feel very emotionally safe if they're like, well, when's the next explosion going to come?
Welcome to the Dad Central Show, the podcast that helps overwhelmed dads conquer stress, build confidence, and become the father their family brags about. Join Drew Solon, a leadership coach and father of five, and Ed Gow Jr., a fatherhood advocate and contributor to the Good Men Project, as we guide you through the journey of fatherhood. We'll show you how to connect deeply with your family, manage your time and energy better, and master tools to become the dad you want to be. Let's get started. Why is it that the people we love the most, our kids, sometimes get the worst version of us? We need to realize that calm is a skill, not a personality trait. So on today's episode of Dad Central, we're going to be talking about from explosive to calm, tools that stop yelling and start responding. So we're going to delve into it today and help dads understand that yelling isn't a character flaw, it's a stress response, and we're going to give you simple, practical tools to slow down, regain control, and respond with intention instead of action. So as always, you are watching Dad Central, a parenting podcast to reduce stress and build confidence in fatherhood. And as always, our show is sponsored by Dove Men Plus Care. Dove Men Plus Care believes that care is the best of a man because when men care for themselves and others, there's a positive impact. And before we go any further, we want you to support us. So we want you to send in questions to us at podcast@dadcentral.ca. And also another thing, subscribe. So if you are listening to this, subscribe on your favorite platform. If you're watching this, subscribe on our YouTube channel, because we know a lot of people, many of you listen to us, but you don't subscribe. So I'm just doing that. So let's get to our conversation topic today, Drew. And when you think about this topic, what are your thoughts?
I only have a few seconds, right? So my thoughts are, this is so important.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a tough one. We're building this theme this month around anger and yelling and explosiveness and managing ourselves and helping our children manage themselves. And so this is another one of these conversations where it's a challenge for fathers. It's a challenge for families, and it's a challenge in, I think, today's day and age, just because of the levels of stress that I think we see everywhere. And that for me is why I think it's really valuable to talk about it. Plus, internally, this really does cause a lot of shame, guilt, which we talked about in our previous episode. And that can be quite challenging for dads to overcome and really engage in parenting in the way that they really want to. And so I think it's good that we're having a conversation.
100%. So before we get really into it, also too, this episode's not about guilt. It's about awareness and tools. So we're going to cover some different areas today. We're going to talk about why dads explode. We're also going to chat about tools to stop yelling and start responding, and the cost of yelling. So Drew, let's start it off with why dads explode. And Drew, you never explode, so I don't know if you can talk about this.
Yeah, very facetious there, Ed. It's true now for sure that I would say it's extremely rare that this happens for me. Whereas I'd say early on in my journey, it had happened, and it caused some of the feelings that, I understand that we've talked about in the last episode. So, why dads explode? Well, it's often a stress overflow, right? You are experiencing a lot externally, either at work, with your family, with your health, with your significant other. And of course, kids add levels of stress to that, right? You could also maybe dealing with lack of sleep. Maybe you're just often feeling disrespected, either at work or ignored. Same thing at home. Maybe you're feeling disrespected or ignored. And essentially what's going on is, your nervous system is on overload. And what happens is when you get triggered, you go into fight or flight, right? The brain goes into a reaction and it doesn't reason. And so it's really that level of stress. I think the analogy is that tachometer, right? In the car, like, with the stresses of life, you move closer and closer to that red line. And if you don't find ways to release that stress, it doesn't take much to be able to tick that over into the red line. And that's when those reactions happen. And so, really, it's normal, it's human, it's everyone does it and goes through this. So ultimately, dads, what we want you to take away is that you're not a bad person because you reacted. We all have reactions. You are overwhelmed and you're not maybe having the right tools to be able to manage and release some of that tension or that pressure or that stress to bring that tachometer back down to a more reasonable level so you can actually handle a little bit more without reacting. And so, it could be various reasons, but as a dad, just think about it. Where is your greatest source of stress right now? And what are the thoughts that are coming along with that stress? Are they negative, self-critical, hopeless? Those types of thoughts, they're the ones that keep you stuck the most. And so you have to identify that first. But so those are just some thoughts around why do dads yell? Well, it's this intensity and pressure that builds up without a healthy release valves.
Yeah, Drew, always great perspective. And I know you've delved into this area a lot in regards to from personal experience, but also research wise. As a dad, where you are at now, do you realize when those stressful moments are coming? Do you feel it more than when you were first a dad?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just notice it. I feel the tension in my body. I notice the thoughts that I'm having. And then I also recognize the feelings that start to come up when a situation happens. And so, my process now is if I need time and space, I'm able to remove myself, get some time and space. If I need to talk about it, I'll find an opportunity with Kristen and we'll share, and I'll say, look, here are some of the things I'm feeling. Or even in the moment, learning to actually speak out what you're feeling. I'm feeling really frustrated right now. I understand that you're looking for this or you feel this when talking to my kids. But I want you to know that I'm feeling frustrated as well. And so just putting it out there allows us to be able to actually work through it together, or at least for people to begin to adjust to each other in ways. Anyways, those are just how I handle things now.
Yeah, and we'll delve into this a little bit later in regards to tools. We're just in my mind right now to bring that out in
Yeah.
the front end, and we're going to go deeper into it in a few moments. And I just want to, before we move on to our next section, just say you're not a bad dad. You're an overwhelmed one. I think there's a big difference. You're not a bad, you're overwhelmed. So as Drew said a few moments ago, it's normal when you're overwhelmed that's going to happen. That doesn't mean you're bad. Do not hit that guilt and on yourself. You're just overwhelmed. Let's go next to the cost of yelling.
Yeah. Well, I remember receiving some messages similar to this from various dads or even parents. Hey, the only time my kid listens is when I'm yelling. And so, one of the results sometimes of yelling is you get some compliance from your children. But the reality is that's, I'd say, short lived because it's based off of fear. It's based off of, you could even say dominance because, you're exerting that dominance in terms of raising your voice and becoming bigger and yelling. And that eventually children are going to grow deaf, we'll say, to the yelling because they're going to just start to tune you out. And that's not built off of connection. And connection is ultimately the most effective and most powerful way to be in a healthy relationship. And so, when you yell significantly, you're eroding the foundation of a healthy, safe relationship. It's going to be very difficult to continue to build trust, and of course kids don't feel very emotionally safe if they're like, well, when's the next explosion going to come?
Mm.
And the other thing is children, you know they'll usually, they'll go into fight, flight, or freeze. So they'll either avoid, they'll shut down, or they'll become explosive in response. And so what you're doing is you're teaching them unhealthy, like, by proxy we'll say, you're teaching them to learn unhealthy coping mechanisms. So, and again, this isn't about guilt. It's about recognizing the impacts on our children as they're growing and what they're learning as a result of our inability to manage our own stress and respond in healthier ways. So, I think those are some important things to know. anyways, Ed, you can talk a little bit more maybe about some of the internal aspects for dads.
Yeah. I haven't shared this story for a while, but one of the stories that has never left me in regards to yelling. A number of years ago, I was working at Canada's only fatherhood family center. And father came in one day and we sat down. He goes, "Did you see my son?" I go, "No." He said, "Did I come in with him?" I go, "No." And his son was about maybe 3 or 4 years old. So he's in full panic mode, runs outside, then comes back 5 minutes later, can't find his son. I said, "Okay, well, let's call the police, etc." So as I'm ready to call the police, lady comes in with his son. And you would, well, you don't know what sort of reaction is going to happen, but what was his reaction? He started yelling at his 3-year-old son. And I can understand the situation, but I thought, oh my goodness, like the potential trauma on his son in regards to that, the long term effects. So after he finished, I sort of told him, calm down, calm down. We sat down and reasoned about it. But I've never forgotten that story and just the the cost, the long term effects. You know, I haven't seen the father in many, many years, but I'd be just very curious to see if there's been any long term impacts with his relationship with his son from like 3 years old. Like there are parents that think, oh, yeah, they're not gonna, it's not gonna impact them. Yes, it will impact them. It can potentially impact them. So I just wanted to bring that story because it's something I've never forget, and it impacted me just seeing that happen. So don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, let's talk briefly, almost like a debrief. And really what I think was going on, there were he was probably afraid, like,
Yep.
where's my son? I've kind of lost him. That's pretty scary. But he also may have felt judged or inadequate.
Hmm.
Here I am coming in to show off my son, and I've lost him. So people are probably thinking I'm a bad dad. Feelings of guilt, maybe even shame. So there's a lot going on there emotionally. And essentially, what you saw was the explosion of these difficult emotions without an ability to actually be able to communicate them in healthy ways. Also, without recognizing what does the child need
Right.
right now. A child who was maybe misplaced or lost or just wandered away, which young kids do, really needs safety, psychological safety, emotional safety, as well as like physical safety, know that it's going to be okay. And so there are so many, I'll say, takeaways from, yes, you may feel those things, but your job as a dad is not to then spill your mess out onto your child. And that's where we need to go next, is we need to have some tools to stop
There we go.
yelling
Yeah.
and start responding.
Yeah. Well, since you did the segue wonderfully, let's go into it. Let's get some tools to stop yelling and start responding.
So number one, that dad could have just paused, right? I mean, in the moment, in the it's stressful, hugely stressful, but pause. Like, take a big deep breath, or three or five, or even count to 10 and breathe before you even open your mouth. And I'll share a brief story. So a couple years ago, the kids were all out and they were doing tie dye. I said, "Okay, guys, great, go have at it, have fun, but I want you to make sure you only do the tie dye on the grass. Do not put it on the walkway because the dye might stay in the walkway." Long story short, I walk out after they're all doing tie dye, and what do I see all over the walkway? All the colors, and I'm like, and I got really, really agitated. But what I did is I kind of walked around to the back of the house, took a few deep breaths, thought about it. What's my goal here? I came back in and guys, okay, kids, come here, please. Calmly. And I said, look, what did I say to you about the die? Where were you supposed to do it? Okay. I'm really upset right now. I'm really angry because I asked you specifically and you didn't follow what I asked. But I said it calmly. I said, I'm going to take a few minutes because I'm really upset right now. So when I come back, though, we're going to talk about it and you're going to have to come up with a solution on how you're going to clean this or how you're going to fix it. But that was my process. And I paused first, which helped that. And I took some distance from myself between my kids. So just pausing is important and one tool. Okay. Don't jump into reaction. Find a way to pause and breathe. Let's talk about another tool, Ed.
Well, I guess the next is naming the feeling silently or out loud. So you can say, whether internally or externally, I'm overwhelmed, I'm out frustrated, because naming it will reduce the intensity of it. So just admitting it, that's the first step to move forward. You can have it going on in your head, but and whether it's to yourself or if you can do it with someone else. Again, we always believe in connection and community. It's always good, yes, to name for yourself, but also if you can reach out, whether it's a dad, a counselor, etc. That always, to me, is the first step. It's the first step to move forward. So, Drew, what's our next step?
This one is important, and I just talked about it in the story I shared, is you want to lower the volume to kind of lower the moment. And so when you actually consciously choose to speak with a calmer, slower voice, it actually is forcing your body to calm down as well. And so when you do that, kids will tend to, and I noticed this in my kids in the story I just told, is that the kids will often lean in. I mean, I could see that they were so paying attention to what I was saying, and their eyes were kind of like wide. They're like, they knew it wasn't good, but I was calm. And I spoke very softly and slowly. And so I think that makes a big difference. You want to lower the volume of your voice and slow it down so that they'll actually hear what you're saying. And it helps you calm down physically. And Ed, this last one I think is the most important.
I think both of us want to chime in on this one about repairing after the moment. So having a short repair script saying, I shouldn't have yelled, I'm working on staying calm. Saying that to yourself is very important, but it models accountability and emotional regulation. And Drew, I know you want to add on to that.
Well, look, even if you catch yourself starting to yell, you can even just shut your mouth. Like you can just stop. And then you can go back to some of those other tools and be like, I'm really sorry. I am quite angry, naming it. I'm working on like staying a little more calm. I'm going to take a pause and then I'll be back to talk to you in 2 minutes, whatever, right? So you can use these tools interchangeably at any point in time. But the idea of when you do make a mistake, choosing to repair is one of the most valuable tools you can have to model humility, to model, apology, and to help children know that it's okay that you make a mistake. What matters most is how you recover after that mistake. So I think there's so many benefits of choosing this process of repairing, even when you don't be as calm and perfect and use all those tools exactly how you want to, because that really is the most valuable.
100%. So let's do a recap. We talked about why dads explode. We talked about today also the cost of yelling, also tools to stop yelling and start responding. So some of the key takeaways: yelling is a stress response, not a failure. And calm parenting starts with self-regulation, not control. We also have pausing causes space for better choices. Also, repairing after yelling builds trust and connection, and every calm moment is a win. I like that. Every calm moment is a win, no matter how small. So, Drew, what's our resource for our family today?
I think our most valuable resource is our dad mentor father leader community. It's a brotherhood of dads coming together to grow themselves, and I think it's a safe place. It's a place where we've got tools, resources. We've got our Connected Dad course, which is following our dad's roadmap, which is a 5-step plan to help you go from being stressed, overwhelmed, to much more calm, connected, and ultimately confident as a dad. So dad mentor, the father leader community is our resource.
All right, well, just a few quick points before we shut down today's episode. So, calm doesn't mean perfect, and always progress over perfection. And kids don't need flawless dads, they need present and learning dads. And then one calm response today changes the tone tomorrow. So, as always, I want to say thank you for giving the most important thing, your time, for us. and we appreciate it and don't take it for granted. As always, don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace, and we'll chat with you soon. Be well.